Hi, I'm Chris, on-farm network agronomist with the Manitoba Pulse and soybean growers. In this video, I will be going over the soybean row spacing trial results that we held in 2024. So what is the goal of a soybean row spacing trial? What are we trying to answer with these row spacing trials is, does row spacing affect soybean yield? And do row spacings change how quickly the canopy closes, which may have an impact on weed control? So last year we had 5 row spacing trials. See the map on the for the trial locations, which are circled in red, and 2 trials tested narrow, which are 7.5 inch to 10 inch, versus intermediate, which are 15-inch rows, and 3 trials tested intermediate rows versus wide rows, which are 30-inch. For all of these trials, the same seeding rate was used between each row width treatment, and the seeding rate ranges were 140,000 seeds per acre to 168,000 seeds per acre. At the soybean row spacing trials, we evaluate plant stands in these trials by taking plant counts. What we do is count 10 feet of 2 rows in each strip, and this happens in the early season or the vegetative stages, and again in the exact same spot in the late season, and we call that the reproductive stages. So here's the plant stand analysis where we are evaluating whether plant stands are changing with narrow or wide row widths over the course of the growing season. And looking at the left-hand graph, comparing the narrow rows to intermediate rows, we saw a reduction in plant stand in the 15-inch rows compared to the 7.5-inch rows for both early and late reproductive stages. And on the right graph, we compared the plant stands of intermediate rows to the wide rows, and we saw about even plant stands numbers between the 15-inch and 30-inch rows over the whole season. And there were fewer plants at the later stages than vegetative stages or the early stages for the both row widths. The standard data across all site years from these trial types for all of the years that we've had these trials have shown a strong trend towards a reduction in plant stand in the wider rows compared to narrow or intermediate rows. But this year we really only saw a plant stand reduction when moving from narrow to intermediate rows. Stand reductions seen in wide rows are generally accepted to be caused by plant-to-plant competition within the row, where there is less space between the plants, which can cause plant thinning. We also evaluate canopy closure, or the percent ground cover of the different row spacings. We do this using the Canopy app, where you take a picture and the app converts it to green versus bare ground and gives us the percentage of plant ground cover. We assess canopy closure during early flower, early potting, and the seed fill stages. This year we found that the intermediate rows had 8% more canopy cover than the 30-inch rows at R3 or early potting stage. There is an advantage with narrow rows being more effective at shading out the later emerging weeds than wide rows. But what does this mean for yield? There was a strong trend towards narrower rows having a yield advantage over the wider rows at 4 out of 5 trials, but none of these yield differences were considered statistically significant. But at one trial, soybean row spacing 05, there was a significant 3.3 bushels per acre yield increase in the wide or 30-inch rows over the 15-inch rows. This particular field did have a poor seedbed though, and the rows were very unevenly spaced from a GPS outage at seeding time. So we will take this result with a grain of salt, and we may even decide to remove this result from the database because of the issues that it had. Historically, we have seen that narrower rows provides a yield advantage over wide rows. We can't really quantify the economics of these trials since how you'd achieve changes in row spacing varies so much by farm and the equipment available at each farm. So in summary, what we found in these trials in 2024 was a reduction in plant stand in the 15-inch rows compared to the 7.5-inch rows over the course of the season. And this was likely due to intra-species competition. And that intermediate rows closed in or canopied over faster than wide rows, which means a more competitive crop against the weeds. And finally, at 1 out of the 5 trials, we saw a significant yield increase with the wide or 30-inch rows compared to the intermediate or 15-inch rows. But the row spacings at this trial were very uneven, making it a result with a big asterisk. And we have generally seen that anything narrower than wide will provide a yield advantage. If you're interested in learning more about these trials, every trial result is available in the On-Farm Network database at manitobapulse.ca or follow the QR code shown. If you're interested in participating in a trial, get in contact with me. Here's my contact information. And thanks for listening. Find out more information on our website or follow us on social media.